The rain started falling, in large heavy drops, turning the ground into mud, drenching the king's purple robes, and dissolving the blood on the young man's face. "I am so very sorry about your father," said the king. "It's not your fault," replied the young man. "Do you remember 12 years ago in the castle, that crying little boy who wanted you to bring back his grandmother? That was me. I didn't realize then that you couldn't possibly do what I asked for. Today, I wanted you to save my father, yet it was impossible to do that now without jeopardizing the launch. But you have saved my life, and my mother and my sister. How can we ever thank you enough for that?" "Listen to them," said the king, gesturing towards the crowd. "They are cheering for me for what happened tonight. But the hero is you. You cried out. You rallied us against evil." The king signaled to a guard to come and unlock the handcuffs. "Now, go to your mother and sister. You and your family shall always be welcome at the court, and anything you wish for, if it be within my power, shall be granted." The young man left, and the royal entourage, huddling in the downpour, accumulated around the monarch, who was still kneeling in the mud. Amongst the fancy couture, which was being increasingly ruined by the rain, a bunch of powdered faces expressed the superposition of joy, relief, and discombobulation. So much had changed in the last hour. The right to an open future had been regained. A primordial fear had been abolished, and many a long-held assumption had been overturned. Unsure now of what was required of them in this unusual situation, they stood there tentatively, as if probing whether the ground would still hold, exchanging glances, and waiting for some kind of indication. Finally, the king rose, wiping his hands on the side of his pants. "Your Majesty, what do we do now?" ventured the most senior courtier. "My dear friends," said the king, "we have come a long way, yet our journey has only just begun. Our species is young on this planet. Today we are like children again. The future lies open before us. We shall go into this future and try to do better than we have done in the past. We have time now, time to get things right, time to grow up, time to learn from our mistakes, time for the slow process of building a better world, and time to get settled in it. Tonight, let all the bells in the kingdom ring until midnight, in remembrance of our dead forebears. And then, after midnight, let us celebrate till the sun comes up. And in the coming days, I believe we have some reorganization to do." Moral. Stories about aging have traditionally focused on the need for graceful accommodation. The recommended solution to diminishing vigor and impending death was resignation, coupled with an effort to achieve closure in practical affairs and personal relationships. Given that nothing could be done to prevent or retard aging, this focus made sense. Rather than fretting about the inevitable, one could aim for peace of mind. Today, we are in a different situation. While we still lack effective and acceptable means for slowing the aging process, we can identify research directions that might lead to the development of such means in the foreseeable future. Deathist stories and ideologies which counsel passive acceptance are no longer harmless sources of consolation. They are fatal barriers to urgently needed action. Many distinguished technologists and scientists tell us that it will become possible to retard and eventually halt and reverse human senescence. At present, there is little agreement about the timescale or the specific means, nor is there a consensus that the goal is even achievable in principle. In relation to the fable, where aging is of course represented by the dragon, we are therefore at the stage somewhere between that at which the lone sage predicted the dragon's eventual demise, and that at which the iconoclast Dragonologists convinced their peers by demonstrating a composite material that was harder than dragon scales. The ethical argument that the fable presents is There are obvious and compelling moral reasons for the people in the fable to get rid of the dragon. Our situation with regard to human senescence is closely analogous and ethically isomorphic to the situation of the people in the fable with regard to the dragon. Therefore, we have compelling moral reasons to get rid of human senescence. The argument is not in favor of lifespan extension per se. Adding extra years of sickness and debility at the end of life would be pointless. The argument is in favor of extending, as far as possible, the human health span. By slowing or halting the aging process, the healthy human lifespan would be extended. Individuals would be able to remain healthy, vigorous, and productive at ages at which they would otherwise be dead. In addition to this general moral, there are also a number of more specific lessons. 1. A recurrent tragedy became a fact of life, a statistic. In the fable, people's expectations adapted to the existence of the dragon, to the extent that many became unable to perceive its badness. Aging, too, has become a mere fact of life, despite being the principal cause of an unfathomable amount of human suffering and death. 2. A static view of technology. People reasoned that it would never become possible to kill the dragon because all attempts had failed in the past. They failed to take into account accelerated technological progress. Is a similar mistake leading us to underestimate the chances of a cure for aging? 3. Administration became its own purpose. 1/7 of the economy went to dragon administration, which is also the fraction of its GDP that the US spends on healthcare. Damage limitation became such an exclusive focus that it made people neglect the underlying cause. Instead of a massive publicly funded research program to halt aging, we spend almost our entire health budget on healthcare and on researching individual diseases. 4. The social good became detached from the good for people. The king's advisors worried about possible social problems that could be caused by the anti-dragonists. They said that no known social good would come from the demise of the dragon. Ultimately, however, social orders exist for the benefit of people, and it is generally good for people if their lives are saved. 5. A lack of a sense of proportion. A tiger killed a farmer. A rumba of rattlesnakes plagued a village. The king got rid of the tiger and the rattlesnakes and thereby did his people a service. Yet he was at fault because he got his priorities wrong. 6. Fine phrases and hollow rhetoric. The king's morality advisors spoke eloquently about human dignity and our species-specified nature in phrases lifted, mostly verbatim, from the advisor's contemporary equivalents. Footnote, reference to Leon Cass, among others. Yet the rhetoric was a smokescreen that hid rather than revealed moral reality. The boy's inarticulate but honest testimony, by contrast, points to the central fact of the case. The dragon is bad. It destroys people. This is also the basic truth about humans in essence. 7. Failure to appreciate the urgency. Until very late in the story, nobody fully realized what was at stake. Only as the king was staring into the blooded face of the young, pleading man does the extent of the tragedy sink in. Searching for a cure for aging is not just a nice thing that we should perhaps one day get around to. It is an urgent, screaming moral imperative. The sooner we start a focused research program, the sooner we will get results. It matters if we get the cure in 25 years rather than in 24 years. A population greater than that of Canada would die as a result. In this matter, time equals life, at the rate of approximately 70 lives per minute. With the meter ticking at such a furious rate, we should stop faffing about. 8. And in the coming days, I believe we have some reorganization to do. The king and his people will face major challenges when they recover from their celebration. Their society has been so conditioned and deformed by the presence of the dragon that the frightening void now exists. They will have to work creatively, both on an individual and a social level, to develop conditions that will keep lives flourishingly dynamic and meaningful beyond the accustomed 70 years and 10. Luckily, the human spirit is good at adapting. Another issue that they may have to confront eventually is overpopulation. Maybe people will have to learn to have children later and less frequently. Maybe they can find ways to sustain a larger population by using more efficient technology. Maybe they will one day develop spaceships and begin to colonize the cosmos. We can leave for now the long-lived Fable people to grapple with these new challenges, while we try to make some progress in our own adventure.